going to come up and do that. But I want to make sure that we acknowledge a few folks. First and foremost, all of you for being here. This kind of a conference. This kind of a summit only works when we get the right mix of people in the building, and we saw it with, people like Jeff and Sam jumping in saying, sure, I'll do sessions in a moment's notice, or jump on a panel or whatever, Cheryl doing that. We saw it just with the interaction amongst all of you, sharing great ideas, interacting with presenters and each other. That's what's, I think Casey said it the other day, that's the beauty of this event. So thank you all for being here and for participating so fully. I want to one more time thank all of our sponsors. Again, this kind of event isn't possible if organizations and companies and others don't step forward to support it. So real quickly, I want to run through, again, our underwriting sponsor, Google Making and Science. One of our fun-making sponsors, Alexander Valley Vineyards, and yes, the Powerhouse will be open after this session again. Autodesk, Camelback, the Career Technical Education Foundation of Sonoma County, Lagunitas Brewing Company, One Workplace, Sonoma County Office of Education Alternative Education Support Services, the Sonoma State University Maker Educator Certificate Program, and Sparkfun Electronics, and a special shout out to Doug Benson. Another thing that makes this particular event unique is the venue, and I know that with the few challenges that come through, we do apologize for some Wi-Fi issues along the way, and we'll continue to work on those. But it really is an amazing place, I think, to have this type of event. It just really adds to it. And I want to give a huge thank you to two people in particular. Our general manager here at 180, David Farish. And one of our board members who happens to be our most active and involved board member, who's been here all 3 days, and if you come down here, you'll see him here all the time doing any number of things, Tom Federer. The Dream audio team over here with DJ Dax, Audio and Video Entertainment, these guys have been amazing. Dax will step in at a moment's notice. Oh, you need that? I'll run and get it. I'll make it work. Jumps in and does whatever. Comes back here every night, whether it's 10 o'clock at night, 5 o'clock at night, whatever. These guys are breaking things down, setting it up. Amazing, amazing support. Thank you. The SCO team, I cannot say thank you enough. A lot of work goes into this. And the folks you see in the red shirts, some not in the red shirts, a few honorary SCO team members are here with us. Gary Jordan, Susan Donner, Mike Persinger. It's a great team that makes them work every day. Awesome. Go Dan! Tell me something. It wouldn't be a SCO event if Dan didn't cry at some point. So, and I want to give a special shout out to Casey, Matt, and Anna. You guys are. All right, I made it through the hard part. With all of that, before we introduce Tony DeRose, after this ends, Powerhouse will open, so I know that will make a lot of folks happy. Worth Our Weight, a great nonprofit local catering company, is going to be hosting or putting on the barbecue. That'll just be back in the lawn area there. We really know, I know some of you are going to have to leave to either catch flights or get on the road, but if you at all can stay, we would love to have you stay. You've gone through 3 really intense days of learning and doing and making. and to have an opportunity to kind of decompress and just socialize with folks you maybe met or maybe some that you'll meet at the barbecue. So if you can stick around, we really hope you do, and just thank you all for being here.
Okay, before I introduce Tony, I just want to say that it was really amazing to me to see people connecting from Alaska to Pittsburgh to Sonoma County. I hope that those connections live beyond this day when you go back to wherever you go. I hope you made contact points where you can keep the conversation going, because that's where the stuff really grows and multiplies. And again, one of those tingly kind of feelings to see all the people making those connections. So thank you for doing that, and please keep it happening. It's my great pleasure to introduce Tony DeRose. He's the senior scientist for Pixar. Besides having a really cool job and making some really cool products that I'm sure you know of, he's a maker who has supported young makers for a bunch of years now. A bunch of years ago, I met Tony first working with his son and maybe some friends doing a flight simulator that if you went to the Maker Faire anytime in the last 5 years, you probably saw it, probably saw the line. People could actually sit in it for a while, right? A cool kind of thing that would actually turn you around, flip you around, you could do barrel rolls in your whole flight suit. But Tony has been behind the scenes working a lot with getting these maker activities and the maker mindset into the hands of youth, and really excited with some of the things that Pixar is doing as a larger initiative that he's going to explain a little bit about. So without further ado, welcome please Tony DeRose.
So I'd like to talk a bit about an initiative we've got going at Pixar called Pixar in a Box. How many of you have seen one of our films? Good. Anybody see them all? Oh. Do you have a favorite? And don't say Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, because we didn't do that one. Oh, okay, yeah, that's great. Pete Docter. So obviously we like to tell stories at Pixar. But one of the stories that really hasn't gotten much attention is the degree to which math and science and arts and humanities are used in the production of our films. And that's really what Pixar is about, Pixar in a Box. It's really trying to pull the covers back and tell some of those authentic stories about how concepts that kids are learning in classrooms actually are relevant, actually can be used for creative benefit. And that's what we're trying to do with Pixar in a Box. And before I talk too much more about that particular initiative, let me just say a little bit about why Pixar is interested in educational outreach. In some sense, we have kind of education as in our DNA. Our founder, Ed Catmull, along with John Lasseter and Steve Jobs, Ed has a PhD in computer science. He's really an academic. In the very earliest days of Pixar, he founded what's called Pixar University, which is an internal continuing education program within Pixar. So lots of different kinds of classes, from drawing and painting to Arduinos and coding for artists. We really feel like adults in particular, continuing to learn is a part of what keeps us fresh and keeps us creative. And we feel that of young folks coming up as well. So that's part of this. We're just really committed to education at all levels. The other part is that we plan to be in business for a long time, and we would really like to do what we can to help train the kind of workforce that we really rely on. It's a workforce that is super multidisciplinary. It's not just STEM, it's STEAM. So the arts and technology are just integrally woven together. Is that a word? And we don't see a lot of that happening out in society right now. So we'd like to see what we can do to help make that happen. We also rely on employees that can continually reinvent themselves. Our industry, like so many others, moves so quickly that we don't know what we're going to need to know in 5 to 8 years. And so the idea of taking a middle schooler now and training them in specific skills for a job that happens to exist today, it probably won't exist by the time they graduate. And middle schoolers today will be retiring in about the year 2070, right? Nobody knows what the world's going to look like in 2070. So we really feel it's imperative to really instill 21st century skills: creativity, curiosity, the ability to learn on your own, to communicate. And so we're trying to put together a portfolio of initiatives to really try to accomplish that goal. And Pixar in a Box is one such initiative. It's a collaboration with Khan Academy, so it's completely free. If you type pixarinabox.org into your browser, you'll be taken to the landing page. I'll do a quick demo in a sec. It's a 3-year project. We're just coming to the end of the 3rd year. The first year was focused mostly on math content, the 2nd year mostly on science, and the 3rd year mostly on storytelling, the art of storytelling. Let's jump over to the website. Yeah, so you type pixarinabox.org into your browser, you're taken to the landing page. And what you'll find there are a list of topics. And each of these topics focuses on a creative challenge that we face at the studio, and then sort of deepens the understanding of what that creative challenge is, and then also demonstrates how math and science, arts and humanities concepts are used to address that challenge. So we're really trying to ground this in real-world problems that we face every day at Pixar. This isn't Buzz and Woody teaching you addition. This is really deep and authentic connections to math and science, arts and humanities content. It was designed primarily for individual learners, like much of the rest of Khan Academy. But we're starting to think now a little bit more deeply about how to bring other resources to bear so that you can bring it into classrooms. So I'd like to brainstorm a little bit about that as we go through today about ways to use this in classrooms. One of the things we have, which is not super well developed at this point, is an educator's guide, which breaks out, I'll just scroll through it here in a sec. It gives you a little bit of the understanding the architecture of the program and how it's put together. And then it has basically an index split out by grade. So if you're a 5th or 6th grade teacher, here are some math concepts and some lessons that are tied to those concepts. We're focusing mostly on middle and high school students, so it's kind of grade 4 and up, although each topic is kind of gradually gets more difficult. So the early stages of any lesson is broadly accessible to anybody. The deeper you get into the lesson, it gets a little bit more difficult. But feel free to go as deep as you want. Encourage your students to go as deep as they want. If it gets too hard, fine, go off to another lesson. Maybe come back to this lesson, next year or in a couple of years when you feel like you have a little bit more sophistication. This is a little. This is an in-progress lesson finder that we're working on, which is ignore the left window. That's the source code. With the right window, if I'm, say, a 9th grade physics teacher, now I've got over here in the search window, I've got all the lessons that correspond to 9th grade physics. We've also got mappings to Common Core and NGSS standards. And this isn't live yet. We hope to make this live in the next 2 weeks. But this is the sort of thing we're trying to do to get more use in classrooms. Let me give you a sense for what a lesson is like. I'm going to pop into the patterns lesson. And each of these lessons, there's video, there's exercises, there are interactive applets that you can see off to the left here. I'm at this first node. We kick off each lesson with what we call Video Zero. It's intended to be pretty humorous, pretty nicely produced hook. Introducing a creative challenge and at least hinting at the math and science behind it. And then these stand alone. They're really designed for basically all ages. And if you just watch one thing in each lesson, Video Zero is a good thing to start with. So let me show you Video Zero in the patterns lesson. It's a lot better with audio. Oh, okay. All right. Time for a question while he changes the audio session. So far, does it sound like something you might find useful in a classroom? Okay. Not knowing anything about it. I can tell you it's great. Yes. Is there a range of grades? Yeah. Yeah. If you go through the either the lesson plans or the filter when it comes up, you'll see that most of the lessons are broken into, most of the topics are broken into two parts. Part 1 is really intended for middle school, so grades 5 to 8. And then part 2 is really geared toward high school. This part of this progressively getting more difficult. So part 1 is really focused more on kind of deepening an understanding of the creative challenge and giving students a sense of what it's like to be an artist using tools to solve that challenge. And then lesson 2 often goes behind the scenes and said, okay, well, what if you had to be, say, the software engineer that had to write that tool? What would you have to understand in order to accomplish that goal? And we'll see some examples. So let's try this again. So video 0 of patterns.
What is the holdup? Shading artists at the salad bar, those get a little too involved. Is it a fractal?
I think so, that puffy shape. Maybe we should talk about this somewhere else.
I'm Beth, I'm a shading artist. And I'm Anna, I'm also a shading artist. This lesson is about patterns, which we use in shading all the time.
Shading is creating the surface appearance of all the stuff you see in our films. Cars, bugs, trees, aliens. They all start out as modeled three-dimensional objects, but they don't have surface characteristics yet.
We create and apply the textures that make our characters and sets seem like they're made out of something real.
The word "seem" is really important here, because we're not trying to recreate reality exactly.
We're trying to capture the essential qualities of the surface that make it feel believable.
And a lot of times, that quality is actually a pattern.
When we begin creating a surface, we usually start by looking at reference images or things from the real world.
We look at a few different qualities: color, illumination, which is how the surface reacts to light, and displacement, how bumpy or smooth it is.
Let's talk about how we did that with Arlo. In The Good Dinosaur, Arlo was supposed to feel young and fresh. We actually used a succulent plant called Titanopolis as a reference for his skin. Looking closely at the plant, we were able to deconstruct what made it feel right for Arlo. First of all, there was a series of cells that formed the main feature of the pattern. In terms of color, these cells had one color in the cell itself, and the ring around the cell was a darker color. The surface of the plant was shiny, but it wasn't a sharp shine, it was a soft shine. Finally, the cells that made up the main pattern were displaced from the surface, so it was kind of bumpy. Once we figured out these main features, we started creating a pattern. However, to make the pattern feel organic, we needed to do something else to it: add randomness.
Believable randomness can be surprisingly difficult to achieve in computer graphics. Computers are great at modeling regular patterns, but in nature, most of the patterns you see have some variation or irregularity within their structure, giving them a quality of controlled randomness.
Getting that randomness into Arlo's shading was a big challenge, but we used some interesting techniques that we'll share with you throughout the rest of this lesson.
And you'll get to use randomness to create and manipulate patterns of your own.
I bet after this, they'll all start looking at the world like a shading artist.
Hey, check out the bubble pattern in this again.
Okay, so that's intended as the hook. And then the rest of the lesson really deepens the concept. So we want to make sure that students understand not just the math and science behind the scenes, but also the artistic intent. And so we try to really meld those two themes together. So let me show you the next video in this lesson, which is, talks a little bit about the interaction between the art department and some of the technical departments.
We're on our way to the art department, but we can't show you much of it because everything there is super secret.
In the previous video, we saw how patterns were created to texture the dinosaur Arlo for the movie The Good Dinosaur. In this lesson, it will be your turn to make some convincing dinosaur skin using patterns, colors, and randomness.
We're going to introduce you to some techniques used here at Pixar to do this.
such as Voronoi diagrams.
And how we use randomness to make it look more organic.
By the end of this lesson, you'll be ready to make your own dino skin.
And no matter what we're building, it all starts with a shading packet.
And the shading packet comes from one of the artists in the art department, such as Tia.
Hi, how are you guys? Good. I have a present for you. The Dino Leg Shader Packet. There's a few pieces here for you. Some reference, some color specs, and some real reference. Those are for the claws. I don't have all the answers. I'm leaving it up to you guys to do the rest.
So hopefully I get you, a sense of some of the interaction. And then, having teed up this problem, okay, well, how would you make, some of these patterns? It might be interesting to, before you start revealing some of the answers, have a discussion with your class. Some challenge questions like, look around here. Are there any patterns that you see in this environment? Any patterns you want to name? Oh yeah, there's this sign back here. There's patterns on the doors over there. There's the vertical patterns. Those are all pretty regular. If you think about it, kind of everything has a pattern. Right. The fabric here has a really nice pattern. The chairs laid out have a pattern. And some of these patterns are very regular, like the stripes on the door. Some are very irregular, like the folding in the clothing. Some are somewhere in between, like the way the chairs are laid out. It's sort of a grid, but not exactly a grid. So those are some of the things that we want kids to start observing. And then maybe getting into it a little bit more detailed, how would you create the kind of scale pattern that you saw in that dino leg, which is kind of similar to the patterns you might see on giraffe skin? What kinds of techniques might you be able to come up with to create those kinds of patterns? Well, you could certainly draw everything by hand. For us, in a feature film, there's too much stuff to draw everything by hand, and so we tend to have to write computer programs that are going to procedurally generate a lot of these textures, but hopefully with artist control. Yeah, Jim?
Oh, I was just going to say stamp things.
Oh, we can scan things? Yep. That's, stamp them with paint? Yep.
Yeah, rubber stamps.
Using rubber stamps? Yep. So all art films are digital, so...
No, I know that, but I thought you were asking.
I am, yeah, but you're right. If you were going to do this in real life, yeah. So rubber stamps would be a good strategy. In our context, we have to, as I mentioned, it's all digital. It's all nothing is exists in the real world for us. Day jobs anyway. Let's see. So, hopefully at this point the students are starting to get, kind of interested and hooked. And then it's a matter of kind of explaining some of the techniques that we use. So, I'm going to jump here to one of the next videos. And again, this is just to give you a sense for how
Now that
this
you're
lesson's
comfortable reading
unfold.
shading packets, let's get to work.
To begin, let's step back and simplify the problem. A dino leg is essentially a cylinder with claws at the bottom.
Let's ignore the claws for the moment.
And if we unwrap the cylinder, we get a flat rectangle, or a 2D plane.
We can do all the work like this in a flat plane and then wrap it up whenever we want to test it out. Let's first think about the geometry of our dino scales. Each scale is an irregular shape, and all of these different scales need to fit together like a puzzle.
At Pixar, we use a really cool trick to generate these kinds of patterns. It's known as a Voronoi diagram. It's based on a pattern we see all over the place in the natural world, from the spots on a giraffe to the cracks that form when mud dries.
And I love that we can explain the math behind Voronoi patterns with bubbles.
If we fill a container with bubbles like this, they squish together and we get the same pattern based on where the bubbles touch.
Let's think about the geometry of what's going on here. We start by placing a few points somewhere on the plane, doesn't matter where.
Imagine they are tiny bubbles. Let's call these sites.
And then we blow them up into larger bubbles.
Eventually, the neighboring bubbles collide at a single point. As they expand, this grows into a line where they squish together.
These bubble boundaries is where we draw our lines.
And watch what happens when we do this with many sites scattered about. we get this irregular puzzle pattern.
And that's it, a Voronoi pattern.
Or Voronoi partition, if you really want to show off.
We'll call each of these bubble regions a cell. So we have sites and cells.
And there are some really interesting properties here. The border of each cell is always the same distance to the two nearest sites.
And wherever three lines meet, we get a point or a vertex right here. And this is equally distant to the three nearest sites. All thanks to the awesome power of math.
Let's stop here and make sure that you understand how to draw these Voronoi patterns.
The following exercise will get you thinking about how these work. It's also a great time to grab a pencil and paper. Remember, doodling is your friend.
Do you have a good story about Voronoi patterns?
I do. When we were working on The Incredibles, we had this cake that was absolutely beautiful, and it was made for Bob Parr, who was going to take a big bite out of it. And it was full of these beautiful bubbles, and the crust was shiny, and it was moist, and it was really, really gorgeous. And then the story changed a little bit, and the shot ended up being filmed all at night. So you can never see all those beautiful Voronoi bubbles.
Sounds delicious.
So each of these lessons is hosted by one or several Pixar employees, and we tried to pick as diverse a group of employees as we could, so that students of all backgrounds and interests could hopefully see something of themselves in each of these employees. And then we also include what we call getting to know videos that allow these hosts, these Pixar employees, to really kind of tell their story, what they were interested in as kids, how they got to Pixar. Many of them had circuitous routes. Many of them, natural, or really artists or really technologists. But a lot of us really kind of put both of those skills together. So there's a lot of career modeling going on as well here. We're getting a lot of feedback with students, saying, I didn't even know that was a job. As an example, one of our artists is a digital tailor. She makes digital clothing. And that neatly put together her interest in computer science with her interest in fashion and sewing. So it turns out that's a job. So a lot of these, it's not just videos. A lot of these, some of the stops along the lesson are applets that are, many of which are patterned after the tools that our artists use. And so this is really an opportunity for kids to kind of get their hands dirty and kind of be creative. These are more open-ended exercises. And so this is an open-ended exercise on building dino scales using the idea of Voronoi diagrams. So here we have this Voronoi pattern. We can go into add a site mode. So this shows us where all the sites are. They're kind of near the middle of these cells. So I can go in and add a site here, and then it creates a new Voronoi cell. So you can get really, start to get a sense of qualitatively how Voronoi diagrams work. And then you can start working on some of the more artistic aspects, like how much do you trim the Voronoi tiles back to expose the skin around the tiles. You can jump over and pick colors for both the scales and the skin, and then when you're pretty happy with your design, then you can wrap it up into something more or less that looks like a dino scale. So hopefully this is a chance for students to really imagine themselves doing these kinds of jobs that are sort of a mix of art and technology together. And then the second lesson in this topic goes even deeper and talks about how you create kind of controlled randomness in kind of the texture, the color that is on, in this case, dino scales. And this is where they actually get into fractals. So they're going to learn a lot about fractals in lesson 2. For those of you that don't know what fractals are, they're kind of like broccoli, which have patterns that repeat at multiple scales. And once you know what fractals are, you can't help but see them everywhere. Right? Yeah. Okay. Another thing that we're trying to do, especially in this third year of Pixar in a Box, is really talk about the importance of story. So as humans, huge parts of our brain are devoted to telling and understanding stories, right? It's been a major survival strategy for us. You don't have to be eaten by a lion. It's enough to hear a story about what it's like to be eaten by a lion, right? And so that makes storytelling not just important for filmmaking, but for communicating. We all tell stories all the time. And so season 3 of Pixar in a Box is 6 lessons all about how we go about the process of storytelling in Pixar. Let me show you video 0 of from that lesson.
Hey Pete,
Oh, hey Val.
how's it going?
You know what, I'm having a really bad day.
What happened?
What Val's saying when she says, what happened is, tell me a story. And that's actually what this season of Pixar in a Box is all about. To make a movie here at Pixar takes years, but it all starts with a story. Humans have been telling stories since we could speak, probably even before. We tell stories around the campfire. We write plays, we write novels, short stories, we make movies, we take photographs, tweet to each other, the list goes on. The power of story is that it has an ability to connect with people on an emotional level. One of the things you hear all the time as advice is, write what you know. Now, as a kid, I was like, I don't want to write about suburban Minnesota, it's boring. I want to write about explosions and monsters and car chases. Well, what that actually means is, yeah, go ahead and write about monsters and explosions and car chases, but put something into it that talks about your own life, how you feel. You feel scared, you feel alone. Something from your own life will make that story come alive and not just be a boring car chase. When I started directing Monsters Incorporated, the way I pitch it is, it's about a monster who scares kids for a living, that's his job. He clocks in, he clocks out, he eats donuts and talks about union dues, and we thought that was a pretty funny idea, and sure enough, when I would tell it to people, they would smile. But when we told the story as a film, people started getting bored and restless, and they're like, I don't understand what this movie's about. Well, what I finally figured out was that it's actually not about a monster who scares kids. It's about a man becoming a father. And that was what was happening to me. So why write about what you know? Well, it's because probably what happened to you made you feel some particular way. And what you're trying to do really when you tell a story is to get the audience to have that same feeling. One of the big revelations for me telling stories is how much work they are, really. I always thought you just tell the story once and it would be perfect, and geniuses like Walt Disney or Miyazaki, this brilliance comes out of their head once and there it is. Well, the truth is, our stories don't always come out exactly perfectly the first time, or the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time, up to the 30th time. And so you keep going again and again and again, and only after retelling the story many, many times does it really sparkle. This season of Pixar in a Box is about how we at Pixar tell our stories, in hopes that it will inspire you to tell yours.
But seriously, what happened?
Oh, so the first thing, I get to my desk, right? It's 8 o'clock.
So this idea of story, we're starting to experiment with a few ideas and bringing it more deeply into various classrooms. And so one idea that we've been starting to explore with the Oakland Unified School District is putting together a second semester CS course for middle schoolers. A lot of CS courses are either coding for coding's sake, and that's great for kids that really know they want to be coders. There's coding games, that's very popular, which is certainly interesting to some subset of kids. This is really coding as a vehicle for storytelling. And so we want to show the kids that they have a voice. And so part of the class is spent walking them through the story process and having them develop their own story. And then it's very hands-on, very project-oriented, of course. Where the first project is developing a character and using coding to bring that character to life. This is all in 2 dimensions to make it a little bit more accessible. That's a team project in teams of 2. The second project is now bring a world into the mix, so you now have a story and a world to tell it, a character and a world. in which the story takes place. That's a 20-second animated test, again using coding as basically an animation tool. And then the third project is really tell your own story. You know, it might be a public service announcement around some issue in your community. It might be a story about something that happened to you. That's a 30-minute test, and that's done individually. So we're hoping to pilot that in the spring, and we're hoping this kind of becomes a model, you know, way to bring some of the power of story into the classroom to, you know, engage kids that might not be otherwise engaged, and really to help all kids learn the power of story in their everyday lives. And you know, as Pixar, we feel like we've got a little bit of credibility in that regard, so hopefully that'll make a difference. Do we have time for a couple of questions? Yes, okay, yeah, so time for a few questions. Yeah.
The program that you're doing with the Oakland School District, and the things that you mentioned, are some of those things with the coding and storytelling available through the Khan Academy and this stuff? Pixar in a box, or is it something that you guys need to come in and do?
The raw elements of what's behind this class are all on Khan Academy. So Pixar in a Box Season 3 is all about storytelling. So the storytelling part of that classroom will be drawing heavily from the Pixar in a Box assets, the videos and exercises. There are some, there's quite an extensive CS curriculum on Khan Academy itself. So what we're trying to do here with this class is really kind of curate a lot of that material, pull it into lesson guides, pilot it in Oakland. This isn't a done deal. We still have to get approvals, but this is what we're hoping to do. Pilot it in Oakland and then figure out what works and what doesn't, and then make all the curriculum freely available after that.
Thank you so much.
If you have any suggestions for things that you'd like to see to help bring this into the classroom, that would be lovely for me to hear. Starting from 5th grade, yeah.
First of all, I love your company, and just thank you for many, many hours of absolutely sheer joy. You give me hope in a better world.
Is there a butt coming?
No, that was first. This is second. I'm a 1st grade teacher, and I would love to see some of your Pixar in a Box be at some point when someone has time geared also for primary kids. They love your movies, and any time that I can show them a real world connection between what we're doing in the classroom and what they're seeing on the screen, that's just fantastic. So thank you.
For the middle school CS, are you doing it in Scratch or some proprietary thing, the animations?
The most likely platform at this point is code.org. It's visual enough.
Yeah.
You can either program a block or a text.
Cool.
I'm not sure your company or a partnership with another company, but a web browsing video editor. So something Chromebooks could use. There's one that I use and teach, but it's paid. So I know when I come in contact with a lot of teachers, a free video editor would be awesome for Chromebooks. Just putting it out there.
Yeah. I believe there are some for phones that are free. I haven't tried any of them, but yeah, I hear it. Yeah.
It feels very odd to give a suggestion to someone of your stature, but you did ask, so I'll go for it. I work as a project-based learning support teacher at the elementary level, and one of the big aspects of project-based learning is teaching kids how to work in teams. So I would encourage you to possibly look at that. I agree that I'd love to see it at the lower grades. And then another big aspect is community involvement and a real platform for them to make a presentation. So incorporating some sort of public presentation where it's meaningful and they get feedback. They can go back and revise and have iterations and things like that would be a dream. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah. So on the public presentation part, I totally agree. My experience with young makers, really demonstrated that having that signature event, in our case it was Maker Faire, is so powerful. Right? Thousands of people that have come by, even if it's a couple dozen people that have come by, just having that platform to share your excitement and tell the story behind the project is so powerful. So part of what we're planning to do with Oakland is have a presentation evening at Pixar where students bring their final projects in and we do a screening. Again, it's not signed. And another ask would be, we're trying to convince so far, many of the educational projects that we've done so far have been kind of grassroots, more or less under the radar. Pixar in a Box started that way as well. It's starting to get some attention at the executive level now, and so if you can give me ammunition to take to them for why more of this kind of thing is important, I would love to hear from you.
So I have a 12-year-old who is an aspiring coder. Would you point him in a Java direction, code.org? What would be your input?
Oh, what direction? Java, code.org. So I've got a little soapbox on this, which is the particular platform or language isn't the important thing by any means. Right? The important thing is the mindset, so computational thinking, problem solving, working in groups, and you can get those skills in any of those places. So I just encourage you to jump in. Code.org is great. Khan Academy has a nice platform. There are lots of places online. I don't think it really matters. Just getting in, solving problems. If he can be posing those problems for himself, even better, right? Because then he's got, he's bringing his passion to the table.
My students participate in National Novel Writing Month every November, and we have a creative writing club. I'm thinking of kind of renaming it as a storyteller club because I've seen a lot of things about visual storytelling at the Maker Faire this weekend, and I was wondering if is the storyteller component of Pixar in a Box going to go in that direction since you guys make movies as well?
Yeah, the storytelling lessons go, the first lesson is everybody's a storyteller. The second lesson is about character design, character development, wants versus needs, character arcs. The third lesson is about story structure, basically building up to the 3-act structure. The fourth lesson is on visual language, which is really composition, visual composition. The fifth lesson is film grammar, so shot types, how you string shots together. And then the sixth lesson is pitching feedback and editorial. So it's very much a visual storytelling procedure, and a few of us are feeling a little bit anxious because storytelling is really the secret sauce at Pixar, and we're really lifting our skirts with these lessons. We are really telling people, everybody, not just kids, how we go about making our films. And I'm hoping there won't be blowback from the executive team. We're really not pulling any punches. It's the real artists and storytellers really talking about how they do their job, what motivates them, how they get over hurdles. Another big theme in this whole thing is nothing comes out right the first time. You have to iterate, and resilience is a huge thing. So there are lots of kind of recurring themes through this. Somebody's going to cut me off, right?
No, maybe 2 more?
Yes, we have 2 out.
So I used Pixar in a Box a little bit at the end of last school year, and with my 4th and 5th graders, and I've been getting emails all summer from Khan Academy that show me the activity of the students,
And usually it's 0 minutes, and then now I have all these students who have been doing it over the summer just totally on their own. So they have really enjoyed the program.
Well, wonderful to hear, thanks. Yeah, we're getting about 2 million minutes a month of learning. About 2/3 of that occurring during the school day. About between 200 and 300,000 unique visitors per month. So it's having some impact, and stories like that. Thank you very much.
We have one more question back here.
I don't know, last time I was here I had an awesome presentation about a gallery in makerspace, and I bought her book, and her name is escaping me right now, because I put it in my makerspace. And one of the pages in the book said, the test is life, and my principal loved that, meaning, it's not a test at the end of the year, it's not on paper, are we creating people to have an awesome job, really, in their lifetime that's interesting? And to me, you personify that end goal of what we're trying to ground up, I guess, from K all the way through high school, and send them out to a job that all of us would just love to have, and put all those pieces together. So I guess when I'm talking to my students and encouraging them to have that awesome life skill, what is the genuine path of the Pixar if they tap into this? And I think this is awesome. How do I encourage my students, how do they get there? There's all this baby steps, but what is the path of Pixar? How does somebody get in your doors, and what is it that it takes,
Well, a lot of people tell their story of the path to Pixar in the getting to know videos, and there's no one path. There are so many different paths. We have, I'll give you my path, for instance. I always knew I wanted to be a scientist, and so I went to grad school and got my PhD in computer science. I went to the University of Washington and started a computer graphics lab, did research there for 10 years, but always kind of kept in touch. Computer graphics was a small discipline then, so I knew all the people at Pixar. And about 20 years ago, I decided to leave a full professorship, and I've been making cartoons, right, for 20 years. So that's kind of an academic route. We just interviewed a story artist the other day, didn't finish high school. His entire family were bus drivers. He knew that they could help him become a bus driver, but he was really passionate about art. So he spent all his time hanging around comic stores. Turns out there was a storyboard artist from one of the studios in LA that also frequented that comic shop. He started kind of an after-school program to train a few kids. One thing led to another. He got a cleanup job at Warner Brothers. That went well. His philosophy was always say yes to opportunity, so he just said yes to everything that came along, worked his butt off, and has been a story artist at Pixar for now 15 years. And everything in between. So I think the one thing the one thread that ties everything together is passion. Everybody there really loves what they do. And they come at it from many different directions, but more than any one thing, that's what we look for when we interview, is this somebody that's really passionate? So we often spend as much time in interviews asking about personal projects as we do what you've done as part of your professional career, because that shows passion.
Thank you again to Tony. I think Liesl said it perfectly. The work that you do gives us all so much hope and is such an inspiration for us and for our students. So thank you for everything you do.